Hey, everybody, it's Tommy Canale, and please go to our website, beforethelightspod.com. Over there, you can get all our episode information, show notes. You want to reach out to me via email. There's even a contact page for that as well. And you can become members of our Patreon page by clicking on the support section. Follow us on Instagram at Before the Lights Podcast. And if you have a couple minutes, head over to Apple Podcast, rate and review the show. 5 stars, nice comments, always appreciated. Welcome to Before the Lights, the show to find out how those in sports, music, and entertainment made their mark. Let's get this show started. Go get your coffee, grab your drink, tell your family, friends, neighbors, and strangers. The show is starting. Today, we have a treat for you. We have a professional model. She's an actress, a host, a spokesperson, a brand ambassador for many organizations, just to name a few: Under Armour, Coach, and Volkswagen. Born in Washington, D.C., and she's a lover of chocolate and sitcom reruns. Please welcome to the show, Lindsey Weller. Lindsey, how are you today?
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Nice weather finally.
Yes, and you are back east. You were raised in Gaithersburg, Maryland.
Yes.
And talk to me about growing up as a child in that area.
So it actually was a great place to grow up, I think. When my parents first moved there, it was actually pretty quiet. It's very developed now, and that was happening kind of as I was growing up. But it was, what I'm really grateful for is it was actually a very diverse area. So all the schools I went to, all the sports teams I was on were very diverse. So I was really grateful for that. That was a really fun thing about growing up there. It was a really family-oriented community, so that was fun too. I lived in a cul-de-sac, and everybody was around my age. So it was kind of one of those upbringings. I feel very lucky. I definitely don't take it for granted. But
Awesome.
It's really built up now.
Awesome. 2000, 2004 in high school, you were a National Honor Society student, a National French Honor Society student, and a National Music Honor Society student. So academics were obviously very important to you and your family. But on the athletic side, you were the team MVP in field hockey. Where did the whole athletics kick in for you, and how did you get into field hockey?
So, I'd like to say, I feel like most people who are really serious about athletics in high school started when they were really young, and I can't say that. I actually wasn't really into sports growing up.
Okay.
I was kind of a quiet kid, didn't really like a lot of attention, kind of like to do my own thing. So my mom constantly tried to get me to do team sports, and she said I just wouldn't have it. I had my close friends and everything, but I just wasn't really that into it. And then 8th grade, one of my friends, Elisa, just said, here's a flyer. I'm doing a clinic for field hockey. Why don't you give it a try? And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll give it a try. So it wasn't until right before high school that I even knew about field hockey. And I started playing it. I did the clinic. I loved it. And decided that I was going to go the sports route and give it a try. And I ended up being okay at it and really, really liking it. And taking that, I went all the way through college with that. So I'm skipping ahead, I'm sure. But yeah, so it really wasn't even on my radar. I guess that's kind of an unusual piece of the athletic part of my story. But yeah, I fell in love with it right away.
What's interesting that when you say that you just really got into it right before high school, but there's obviously some athletic talent there because, you were the team MVP, you're a state champion, you play in college, and you didn't just pick like an easy sport. You picked a sport that's, one of the more competitive and, physical sports for females.
That's true. So I think that sort of speaks to my personality a little bit. That's probably a good way to say that. So that's probably why I gravitated towards it, because it's definitely a difficult sport. It's kind of hard to pick up. It requires a lot of practice. So I definitely wasn't, I was good. I put in a lot of work, but it wasn't natural to me. I think the running piece was natural to me. I think my frame and my build, that comes from, I think my dad's side of things. So my dad was a triathlete, loved to run, loved to bike, loved to swim. So I think I got that piece from him. So that part didn't really require a whole lot. I trained a lot to really get my mile times down and all that stuff, but I was lucky that I sort of had the frame built in to to excel at that piece of things. But it was the stick skills and the eye stick coordination and all that was really tough to develop. So I definitely wasn't the best in that regard. I just have an incredible work ethic, I think. That's something that taken me a while to be good at, giving myself credit for that. But because I'm also very ambitious, I'm also my toughest critic. So I think I'm very good at a lot of things, but blessing and a curse, I'm my toughest critic. So I give myself a very hard time. I hold myself to very high standards.
Outside of athletics, also in that high school, somewhere in college, you did Cougar TV as a sports reporter on a weekly TV show. Was that like your first experience in front of the camera then?
I think so. Other than the fact that my family is very geared towards those things. My dad is a videographer. He mostly does news, but he's done other things too. So he's a news videographer. He's been doing that forever, since before I was born. My sister is a great photographer. My mom always had a camera in her hand when I was growing up, documenting us at holidays and family events. So my family has always been towards that end of the spectrum. But that was really my own personal start, I think. And I don't even remember, honestly, what drew me towards that. I think it was just something fun. I did it with my best friend, one of my best friends, Danielle, and we did it together. We were co-hosts, I should say, of that segment.
You chose to go to Bucknell University. And what was your recruitment like? Or did you kind of have your mindset that that's where you wanted to go?
It's interesting. I think I kind of mentioned before, field hockey, well, you mentioned field hockey is a very competitive, difficult sport. And I mentioned that I had a strong work ethic, but, I definitely wasn't the most skilled. I had endurance and all that good stuff, good spatial awareness, but I wasn't the most skilled. So I was not heavily recruited. And it also just so happens that when I was going to college, the schools that I was really interested academically also were basically in the top 10 in the country for field hockey. Wake Forest, UNC, Maryland, Michigan, so many others are really consistently competitive field hockey programs. So they are recruiting the top of the top in the country. And I was good, but I was not part of that group, to be perfectly honest. So I wasn't getting recruited very early. So my Bucknell opportunity was very late in the game. I want to say it's maybe junior year sometime, or even my senior year in the fall. And it was either go play at Bucknell or go to Michigan. It was between Bucknell and Michigan, or go to Michigan and cheer for big sports. I could try to walk on, but I probably wasn't going to be playing field hockey. So it was just a matter for me of deciding whether or not having that opportunity was really important to me, or if I was going to be okay leaving it behind. And what I decided was, it was really important to me to give it a try, see how it worked out. If I really didn't like it, I could transfer. But I didn't think I was going to end up at a small school like Bucknell. It was a great academic school, but I was really focused on big sports programs, big football team, big basketball team. So I was focusing on that more than playing. And then this opportunity came up and I said, well, I better give it a shot. And it ended up working out really well.
It did. You were the captain your senior season. You were there from 2004 to 2008. Came out with the bachelor's in English and psychology. You were a Patriot League academic honor roll. And what was the attraction to psychology early on? Because, we're going to get into where you are today, but was the career path something different at that point in time?
It absolutely was. So what I do now actually wasn't even really on my radar. It was on my radar a little bit when I was a kid.
Okay.
One of the things that you have when you're a kid and you sort of kind of lose sight of it somewhere along the way as other things take over. And I think that's kind of what happened. So I've always been a good writer, and I've always been very analytical. I always like to know why people do what they do, what makes them do certain things, what personality traits are good for this or that. So I've always sort of had an innate attraction to psychology. So when I had the opportunity to actually turn that into a degree and really study it, I think I just naturally gravitated towards that. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with it, but I just knew that it was going to be a good degree to do a number of things. So I felt like that would be a good thing to study. And it was just a bonus that I really liked it. And then when I got out of school, I was kind of focused on the writing portion of things. I thought maybe I would be a journalist. So, doing that for a little bit, and then ending up going back to school for psychology, so that was really, psychology ended up being what I thought I was going to do. The plan was to go get a doctorate, a master's, and I'll stop there and let you direct the rest.
Yeah. You ended up attending American University to get your master's in psychology, but I'm going to back up just a little bit. Yes. In 2007, you had a summer internship with ABC World News. How did that come about, and what were your duties there? And let's start there, because I have a follow-up question from there. So let's go there.
So that was actually a great summer. I mean, it was really interesting. That really came about. I had mentioned my dad was a videographer in news. So I had mentioned to him that that's kind of where I was thinking of going. I was like, I really love hearing about what you do. I really like to write. So I don't think I'm going to be behind the camera, but I'd love to explore other avenues in the journalism news world. So he suggested, I was talking to him about it, and he suggested that ABC World News might be a good place to sort of start before I graduated, because one, it's not local. It'll give you kind of more of a global picture of how the news works on a big scale. You could probably meet a lot of great people and just get a taste and see if you like it. So that's kind of how that came about. What I did there, I did a lot of observing there. I did a lot of shadowing, which was great. I did a lot of research for news stories. So they would say, we're trying to cover this. Can you look up a few things about this? Or and then I would just practice. I would even come up with pitches myself. I actually don't even remember if any of them were used. I'm guessing probably not, but it was just more the practice, the exercise of finding something and then backing it up and coming up with a list of facts and figures to sort of go with your story. So that was really, it was a good place to learn storytelling and learn how they do that. And then of course the technology piece of it too is really interesting to see.
Yeah. And then in 2008, for 3 years, you become a freelance production coordinator. And I can see the career path now starting to take a different route for you, but also you didn't give up on field hockey as well, because you went from being a player and now all of a sudden you turn yourself into a coach. And in 2010, while you're still finishing up degrees and working on that, you become the head JV field hockey coach at a girls' private high school. How did you decide that you wanted to get into coaching? Because I can see, to me now, that career path is going, okay, psychology is fun, but now I've gotten this internship and I still don't want to give up on athletics and I'm not really sure which way I'm going to go. So let's try a couple different things. Did you kind of think maybe coaching was an aspect for you?
I did. So it's funny looking back and having, cause it's rare you get the opportunity to, I think, do this. I'll go back and look every now and then, but getting to really talk through it is really fun and unique. So it's interesting looking back, because I feel like that period of time, that's my 20s. So it's just classic confusion, right? All over the place, bouncing around. I feel like that's a common story for a lot of people, and there's no shame in it. I think it took me a little while to learn this, but I remember, I think it's my mom who told me this. She said, sometimes you learn just as much from something that doesn't work out as you do from the things that do. You learn what you don't want to do, and that's valuable information, even though it's kind of disappointing. So that's sort of how I started to approach things, which was really helpful, because I was getting a little frustrated that I couldn't really figure out which direction I wanted to go. But field hockey really never left me. It still hasn't. I miss coaching. I miss playing. It just doesn't quite fit into my world now and my schedule. But when I was back in grad school, I decided to give coaching a try, because I always liked working with kids. Number one, I felt like I was a pretty good communicator, having that psychology background. So I always felt like that was a strength of mine. So I said, well, why don't I try to put these two things together? And since I have the time now, and I had a wonderful coach in high school that I really loved. She really pushed me. She was the reason I played in college. I was very grateful for that. So I wanted to try to hopefully be some semblance of that for another group of young girls. So that was where that came in, because I had the time, and that opportunity also just sort of fell in my lap. But I said, why not give it a go? And I loved it.
Great. Here's what I found really interesting in doing some research on life story, so to speak, in your timeline is you finish up at Bucknell in 2008. You didn't start your master's until 2010, so you took probably a year off. But in 2009, you decided to become a professional model and actress. Where did that all of a sudden click in and go, okay, I'm studying this. I'm still in athletics. I might want to be a coach, but now I want to become a professional model and actress. How did all that develop?
So it's interesting. I credit my start back to a colleague of mine at Fox 5 when I was in local news. So after I had that internship, I decided I was still on the journalism route. So I still wanted to see if that was something I'd be interested in. So this was kind of similar to ABC World News, except I was getting paid and it was on a local level. So figuring everything out, if I liked it. And one of the videographers there, Daryl Brown, wanted to start his own photography business. And he approached me and asked me if I'd be interested in doing a trade shoot, which is just industry lingo, trade for print. So we say everybody just trades their time. So that way, everybody's not spending a fortune all the time on hiring people to do things. You can just help each other out, and you both need something, and you fulfill that for the other person. So he asked me if I wanted to do that, and I said, I'm very flattered, and I would love to give it a shot. I can't guarantee you're going to get anything good because I've never done this before, but welcome to give it a try. So I did that with him, and I still have the pictures I did from that shoot. And it was such a great time. I had the best time. So that was when I really sort of revisited being behind a camera. And it wasn't really on my radar until then. And he said, you should really look into doing this. And I was like, thank you. Like, I appreciate it. I've never been good at taking compliments. Still not. It's still a skill I'm working on. But I was like, oh, thanks. I'll see. I don't know. I had no idea how to go about that or anything. So it was one of those things where I can't say I was a professional. I've been a professional since 2009, but it's certainly where it started. And I started doing things sporadically from that point forward, mixing it in with everything else I was doing, all my other crazy avenues that were happening in my 20s. And it really wasn't until I was 29 that I finally said, you know what? I've tried a bunch of other things. I'm really bored with all of that stuff. And what makes me happy? Being behind the camera. I have a good time every time I do it. Let me see what I can do with this. And I went from there.
And you found your passion, obviously. You can hear it in your voice as you talk about it. And before we go forward, I found something interesting. Talk to me about your 2 Ps of patience and persistence.
So that actually, I can't remember when I first came up with that. Not that it's anything, that someone else hasn't thought of before, but it's just something I sort of tell myself, it's become kind of a mantra for me, the 2 Ps. And it's because the industry I'm in, it really beats you up. You hear no way more often than you hear yes, or you just don't hear anything at all. So it's a lot of effort constantly and consistently for sometimes minimal reward. So you really have to be willing to stick with it. So that's where persistence comes from, and patience too, because it takes a long time to develop the skills. I mean, an argument can be made that you're just constantly developing, even the people who have already quote unquote made it. I would say they probably say they're still developing with each role they do. So it takes patience. You want to be there immediately. You want to be noticed immediately. You want to have your work out there immediately, but it really does take patience. And you put those two together. And to me, in my brain, at least for me, those two put together are what it takes to have the long-term success. And, that's what it'll take for me to be doing this 10 years from now, or those two things put together.
And the reason I bring it up, Lindsey, is pick it back up from 2010 to 2013. You got a lot of things going on. You have marketing, you're in advertising, you're in sales, you're a coach, you're a program manager. You have a lot of things going on. So you obviously got to have both of those things, patience and some persistence, to continue to go forward. And my next question to follow up on that is, you had to have some sort of support system. And what was your support system like when you're trying to juggle all these things, and all of a sudden at 29, you go, okay, now I'm going to go behind the camera and this is what I want to do?
I am lucky that my family has been there from start to finish. I mean, and not finish, but start to now, I should say. I've always been grateful for my family, both my parents. I mean, I've got my dad, who's got kind of the creative side of things. My ability to be patient and persistent, I think, comes from my mom, directly from my mom. My mom's a trademark, copyright, and patent attorney in DC. She's a power woman, to say the least. So she always kind of instilled that in me, that, you can do whatever you want to do. But you're going to have to work hard at it. It's not just going to be given to you. She built everything that she has from the bottom up, in a primarily male industry. Luckily not, it's more even now, but when she started, I think she was in her law firm. She was the first. They had to come up with a maternity leave policy just for her because they didn't have one at the time. So, it's just, she tells me these stories, and it makes me grateful, one, to have her, and two, grateful that the world is kind of the way it is now. It can obviously stand to be better, but that all comes from her. My dad has the creative side of things. He taught me how to really go after what you want, even though it's really difficult, because he does the freelance thing as well. So they put together, I'm lucky that I have both sides of that. And they were skeptical when I said at 29, and this is what I'm going to do. And they were like, really? Are you sure? Not going to work. So to their credit, though, their parents, that's what they're supposed to do. But they were really supportive, and they said, if that's what you want to go after, then go after it. And, we will be here to help you along the way.
Awesome. Coaching wasn't done. You were a JV coach, and now I become head varsity coach at Walt Whitman High School. And then in 2013 to 2014, you're at the Academy of Holy Cross. So how are you juggling starting a professional modeling and actress career, but you're still coaching field hockey? Yes.
So I honestly, the modeling and acting was still pretty sporadic at that point.
Okay.
So, it wasn't my focus yet. I still honestly at that point didn't know that it was going to be any type of career path. It was really just something I like to do. I considered it more of a hobby. I had no idea that I was going to be able to build it into something else. I didn't even know how to go about doing that. So, it was really kind of a side project. I was focusing on everything else and assuming that everything else was going to end up at the forefront. And that's not what happened. But yeah, so the balancing it wasn't easy. But it was easy because I wasn't really making modeling a priority at that point. So I was really focusing on everything else, and assuming that it was just going to be something I liked to do. And that was it.
And it started to work out. 2013, you're the production coordinator at the Daily Deal, but I'm going to jump to 2014. Living Social comes around, which are a live events production coordinator. You're working with high profile clients like on Broadway, WWE, NBA, the NFL, national running events. Did some of these connections and networks then from Living Social help push you and platform you to where you eventually went to today?
I think not directly, but indirectly, I think it did. So I can't say that the contacts that I had there really translated directly to some of my work that I do now. But I think the communication skills that I was able to get working with such high profile people and organizations and everything, and being responsible for their content being on the internet. I was a detail oriented person to begin with, but this really fine tuned those skills and the communication piece of everything as well. So I think that was a great thing to follow up the psychology, honestly, that job, putting those two things together really made me a better communicator than I already was. And I consider myself a pretty strong communicator to begin with, but those two together really, I think, helped put me over the top. And communication is such a huge part of what I do now with networking. You really have to be personable, and you have to know who you're talking to and what's going to appeal to them and what to say and what not to say. So I think that's really where that job at Living Social became valuable.
2015, you become the marketing and advertising coordinator with the Washington Nationals professional baseball team. Athletics still part of your life. We're still working and doing things with athletic. At this time, and my question, and we're going to get to it because in 2016, we're really going to start talking about more of the modeling, but was modeling still just sporadic at the time? So you're looking for other things to fill in the voids and earn income?
It was definitely still secondary. It wasn't until after the Nationals where it really became primary for me. Where the realization kicked in that that's really what I wanted to do. It's obvious that I really like sports. I think based on my history, playing myself, coaching, and the fact that I kind of hung on to it as long as I possibly could, So I and what I studied when I went to get my master's, I did my my primary paper, my master's paper on sports psychology. So that was a real interest of mine. So I was looking to merge those two worlds. When I was still in the psychology route, that was what I was thinking. I was thinking I was going to go get my master's in sports psychology of some capacity, maybe some specialization, maybe just generally, and then hopefully eventually work with athletes, a sports team, anything like that in a psychology capacity. So performance-based or even organizational psychology, which is working with companies and corporate environments and really maximizing the people's ability to perform in those environments. So that's kind of what I was thinking of. But then, so that was why the Nationals job came up. And I actually took a pay cut to go there because I said, all right, well, if I can get in the sports arena, this is my chance. Give it a shot and see if it's all it's cracked up to be. And there were a lot of parts of it that were, but it was one of those things where could I see myself in this environment doing this for years and years and years. And I just wasn't convinced. I couldn't say yes to that, which is when I really jumped ship and went a completely different direction from anything I had done before.
Yeah. In 2016, you become a full-time modeling and acting. What was the aha moment for you going, I'm doing this, I'm going full steam ahead?
I don't know when the exact moment was. I remember in general, it was probably November, right before the holidays. And, I was at work week in, week out. And I was working with really great people and I was, kind of liking what I was doing, but it wasn't as stimulating as I wanted it to be. And I just sort of sitting in my office, I just kept thinking about what makes me happy. I kind of was having all these flashes in my head of all these different things I had done and going these different directions. And here I am almost to my 30s. I think I was 29 at this point. And, I just said, okay, I've done all these different things. Let's inventory because I'm still not feeling content. And why? Why am I not feeling content? What do I need to do? Maybe I need to really do something drastic, like go a completely different route, something unexpected because, and really give that a go because I just feel like I started to feel like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing instead of what was really going to make me happy. I think that was my realization at that time frame. Holidays right before 2016. So November 2015. And I think that's what I started to feel like, that I was going through the motions. This is the way you're supposed to climb up the ladder. You're supposed to enter at this level and then you're supposed to work your way up. And that's just how it's supposed to go. And so I decided I didn't want my life to be based on what I should be doing. I wanted it to be based on what I want to be doing. So that was my realization, I think. And it felt really good. And then it was scary at the same time because I realized that then I had to do it.
Which most things are when you finally commit. It's the unknown factor that you're not really sure about. So Lindsey, what were some of your early challenges then after you go, okay, this is what I'm going to do? What were some hurdles or challenges you didn't expect that kind of hit you right away?
Money, number one. And I took a pay cut to go to the Nationals. So I was making enough to get me by, but that was really, I said, okay, so how am I I'm going to quit this job and how am I going to support myself as I get this going? Because so again, going back to the patience and persistence, I wasn't going to be making a ton of money right off the bat, probably not even much for the first year at least, because I really had to establish myself. I had to get some content. I was going to have to do trade work, take some free gigs just to get images, exposure, network, and really prove myself because nobody's just going to hire you and say, okay, you have no evidence of this, but I'm sure you'll be fine. So that's really how it works. Even now having a bunch of content, it still doesn't work like that. Sometimes you feel like you're the best person for the role and somebody else gets it for some reason or the other. And a lot of times you don't even find out what that reason is. So you just sort of have to constantly be perfecting and working. So money, number one. And the other thing was I honestly didn't really know much about the industry. I was like, how am I going to break in? Who do I contact about getting pictures taken and working with people? So I actually was lucky enough. I sort of started on Instagram, just poking around and finding photographers that looked like they had work that I liked. And I actually luckily enough, found a photographer I really liked, who I still work with today, Marco Ibanez, and he's wonderful. And he recommended a woman named Lauren Deckert, who's from New York, and she's been modeling since she was about 16, and we're about the same age. So she became my mentor. So she luckily took away a lot of that anxiety about how am I going to break in, because she really helped me do that. But I would say those were my top two. And then I guess my third one was, my third worry right off the bat was, okay, what if this doesn't work the way I want it to work? And luckily the reason I say that was third is because I felt like I had my education. I put in all this time doing other things. I really had a great base, I felt like. So if this didn't work out, then I could go back and do something else. I wasn't going to be left at square one. This was just something that I felt like I had to try. And then at least I wouldn't wonder. I would know whether it was, one way or the other. I would at least know.
Right. Did you have any point early on where you thought, oh man, I made a bad decision here and this may not work out as well as I would hope it would be?
Oh yeah, many. And I still do. There are still days where I'm like, what am I doing?
Wow.
It is crazy. Am I gonna, and I think that comes from having the high standards. So I don't do a great job of giving myself credit for the success that I have had. Because I do have to, this probably goes back to not being good at taking compliments either. I guess I'm just kind of a humble person, but I have had a lot of success. And this is, if I look back at where I started in 2016, I've done a lot of things. And I've checked off a lot of things that I didn't think I was going to check off. So I have to do a good job of giving myself credit. But yes, there were certainly in the beginning, especially right when I left my job, because I didn't really have a plan. My plan initially was to waitress, to do things like that were flexible, so that at the same time I could go on auditions and go on castings and do all that and kind of grow that while making some money on the side. But, when I was going out and handing out resumes at restaurants and things like that, I was like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? What happened? I really don't want to waitress, but I'm going to have to. And, it's amazing, but that really pushed me harder to get things going. So I never ended up waitressing anywhere. I sort of made ends meet in random other ways. And I did end up drumming up enough work. I don't know how. Honestly, I look back, I don't really know how I paid for myself in 2016. It's just one of those things that you have to do it. So you do it. And then you look back and you're like, I don't know how I did that, but, but I did.
What was an early reward, or not so much a reward, but what was an early success point of yours that you were like, okay, I think I'm on to something here. This was a good move. Things are starting to go my way and I'm enjoying it. And maybe I could make this a full-time gig and, to where you are today. Was there something early on that kind of gave you a boost?
The first thing that comes to mind for me, it was actually, it was a trade shoot. I didn't get paid for it, but it was a wedding shoot that was out near Annapolis. And the way I got it was, I think that's what really gave me a boost, because the woman who was setting it up, she was a wedding planner, and there was going to be a bunch of vendors involved. And she actually reached out to me on Instagram. So I felt that was very exciting for me, because I had started my Instagram for my professional purposes. And I was, posting and really trying to gain some traction there, because I knew it was a major platform that I really had to be present on and a part of. So when someone reached out to me on Instagram asking me to be a part of something because they really liked my, images that had been posted so far, that was a big deal to me. And that really made me feel like, okay, I'm doing something right. There's going to be a lot of people involved in this one, so it'll be a great opportunity for networking. So it turned out well in the end too, but in the beginning, when she first reached out to me, that was really exciting for me. So that made me feel like I could keep doing this. Like, okay, I just need to keep doing what I'm doing, keep talking to people, keep meeting people, keep posting, and this thing will keep gaining steam. And
it did. And we're going to put links in our show notes, but if you want to reach out to Lindsey, you can connect with her on Instagram or LinkedIn, just her name, Lindsey Weller, or you can go to lindseyweller.com. There's many publications and things you have done since 2016. So things obviously got really good, really fast. But you have numerous publications such as Elegant Magazine, Today's Bridal, you had a feature in there, and Bandit Swimwear. Has any time during all this, with all this stuff you have done, Lindsey, does it ever get old?
It doesn't. It really doesn't. And that's the best part about it. I mean, I think it definitely can get a little tiring. I'm not going to say that every moment. I mean, I drive really far to work sometimes. I'm up at 3 a.m. sometimes to get all the way up to Philly or Jersey for a shoot. And then I drive all the way back in the evening when the shoot's over. So, you just have to be willing to do that. It depends on how much you love it. So it's not for everyone, for sure. But not every moment is great. But honestly, after I'm done working, you look back and every moment has been great. And the variety is what's awesome. I think that's what I was missing from my other career paths. That's every job I do is different. I meet different people consistently every time. I'm going to different places. So that's really, satisfying for me. I love that it's different. I love that I'm meeting people every day. It's constantly stimulating and different. And I love that.
Variety is a way to put it, because you have done a lot of different things, from not just modeling, but acting and different things. And in TV and film, how'd you get your break? I mean, with First Lady, or was that not the first thing you did?
So the first video project I did was actually a commercial for pain relief cream.
Okay.
It was a Blue Emu commercial that I did several years ago now, but it was really fun to shoot. It was kind of a big test for me because, I had a bunch of lines to memorize. They had a prompter there, but I ended up not using it, which was great. I think that made a great impression. But I remember being so nervous that I stepped out in front of the camera. And this comes from my mom. But when I get nervous, my chest gets red all over. Like, it looks like I have a bad rash. I get really nervous and I get really blotchy just in my chest. And of course, I'm wearing a shirt that's like a scoop neck shirt, so you can see it. So I step in front of the camera and they're like, makeup, can we just get a little coverage, please, before we start? So I had to try to calm down. But it was that was really my first video job. And that was, it was, I felt really grateful to get that because it was a national commercial that aired. So it was really fun when that got going. I had friends texting and things like that saying they were seeing it. So that was, I going back to what you said, how I got that job. I work with several different agencies and a couple of different managers as well. And I'm really grateful for them. I'm lucky to have them. I sort of spread myself out based on city. So I have representation in Baltimore, Philly, New York. So if you can sort of have a variety in that sense, geographically, then you can do a pretty good job of filling your schedule. So I'm lucky to have people who work really hard to get me these opportunities. So one of my managers luckily got me that one. So that was great. And I've actually worked with that production company since too. So if you make a good impression, really important, just always be professional because it really can result in repeat work, which is what you want.
Absolutely. First impressions are big in anything you do. Season 1, episode 6, you were in Dead of the Night. And then you said about you've done commercial work. You've done stuff with Black & Decker, Samsung, Toyota. How does it feel to see yourself on TV?
It's actually really cool. This sounds lame to say that. It's really cool, but I think, I don't often draw people's attention to it. I'll just keep an eye out for it. So I guess it's really satisfying for me personally. So I try to keep it though. I mean, if people see it, great, but I'm not the type of person to announce it all over the place. I might write a little post about it or something, but I'm not broadcasting it all over. So for me, I really keep it personal, and it's really personally satisfying because whenever I see it, I think back to when we shot it and all the work that went into it. And that really that's what makes it exciting for me to see. It's not that I feel like I have to be on TV and I have to be on camera. It's the pride that I take in doing a good job and making a good impression and being able to produce something like that and be a part of something like that. And then see the final outcome is really, really exciting.
Your stuff out there more. When I got to your website and saw everything you did, I was shocked. I'm like, she's done a lot. So you definitely got to push some more stuff out there.
See, it's a constant process. I still have things I can work on. I have to be a little bit more of a braggart, I guess.
Right. You've done runway work as well. London Fashion Week and New York Fashion Week. Runway modeling. What's the biggest hurdle of that?
Oh man, I don't do a lot of it anymore. The biggest hurdle is the standards that everybody sets, which are slowly changing, luckily, and becoming a little less rigid. But, I'm about 5'7", which is pretty tall for the average woman. I think is maybe 5'4", maybe 5'5" now. I think it's getting a little taller, but traditionally runway models are 5'10", 5'11", 6 feet tall, which is how many women are that tall?
Not many.
Hardly any. So that's really, and I think the stereotype was they used to all be really stick skinny, and, the joke is models don't eat. And I'll have everybody know I eat a lot. I love food. And that was one thing I said from the very beginning. I said, I am not going to be one of those people who adheres to diets and sacrifices and does all that. I was like, it's not worth that. Like, you have to live and you have to be happy. And it's, you can't let everybody control that aspect of your life. But total side note. So I think, runway is really difficult because there are kind of still those standards and restrictions and requirements that linger. So I don't do a lot of it anymore because it was kind of difficult. I mean, it was difficult to get because most of the time it would say 5'8" and above. So that's the hurdle there. But again, you see a lot more variety on the runways these days, which I love. So who knows, maybe I'll get back into it a little bit. But I think I like, creating a piece of work a little bit more than just walking. For me personally, definitely, I know a lot of people love runway, and that's great. It just depends what your personal preference is, what really brings you joy. And I just sort of, as I did it, I was testing out all these different modeling avenues, and runway was just kind of became lower on the list as the more I did for me personally. So I just find more joy in other aspects.
You've done a lot of things, Lindsey, since 2016. Looking back, is there any one or two favorite projects that pop into your mind that you really enjoy doing?
One is actually pretty recent. I'm a big animal lover. And I think I put that in my about section. I have a rescue dog, Ajax. So I've just always been an animal person. I call myself a crazy dog lady. So one of my favorite ones that I recently did was a pet shampoo commercial. And it's not up on my website yet. I have to get it up there, but I got to work with a golden retriever. And it was really, really fun. It was a nice warm day. We shot outside. So that was really enjoyable too. It was just a nice casual day, but low stress project, I should say, which always helps. It's fun to do those too. But so I got to, shampoo him up, and his name is Oshie. He's named after one of the Caps players. So that was really fun too. So definitely it was fun to work with people who were from this area also. And actually, funny enough, the production company was the same one that I talked about earlier with the Blue Emu commercial. So everything, and that wasn't even on purpose, but everything cycles back around. So that was one of my favorite ones, just because it sort of combined two things, my passion for being behind the camera, but also the animal piece too. So that was really fun to put those two together.
What's upcoming for you now?
Let's see. Well, in this trying time, it's difficult to say, but I am still networking. I actually had my first virtual audition just this morning. So that was interesting. I had to disassemble my bedroom and make it into an acceptable home studio. So, I think people are going to start to figure out ways to keep things going, but it's been difficult at this point. I've actually been considering writing a little bit, going back and seeing if I can try my hand at writing, a TV episode, a short film, something. I have no idea what it's going to be, blogging. But, I mentioned earlier that I was an English major, and writing was always an interest of mine. So, I think I've been asking myself the same question. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, but I kind of want to add another piece to that. And I'm trying to figure out what that piece is. And I keep coming back to writing. So I think that's probably next on the agenda. I can't guarantee it's going to be any good, but we'll see. I think I'm going to try my hand at it.
What I just find funny at that is the whole spectrum has come full circle for you. The more I do these, the more I'm finding out that people's lives are becoming more full circle than they realize. And COVID has presented a lot of hurdles and challenges for the whole world. And you have to be creative these days to find ways. And you're going back to what going back to writing, English, psychology, and who knows what you'll come up with. I'm sure it'll be something really good. But last question before I let you go, Lindsey, is what are you not good at?
Oh, what am I not good at? Plenty of things. Not good at accepting compliments. I think I'm not always easy enough on people, I think, which comes from the fact that I'm not easy enough on myself. Like I said, I'm my own toughest critic. So I think, going back to the 2 Ps, I know we're kind of beating those to death, but, having patience with myself. So not only patience with the process, but having patience with myself, patience with other people. I think that's kind of something that I'm always going to work on. Not being a perfectionist. So being a perfectionist is great in some ways, but for me, it's a hindrance a lot of times. I focus too much on teeny tiny things that really kind of then make me stumble versus helping me move forward. So that's really a weakness of mine. I'm really struggling to sort of be more, I think, easygoing in a lot of ways. Socially, I'm very easygoing, but when it comes to my work and everything, I'm working on sort of being more at ease with the process and, letting things roll off. And that's a skill that definitely doesn't come natural to me. I'm an analytical person. I nitpick everything. So I'm working on, it happened, it's over, you're done with it.
You can connect with Lindsey at lindseyweller.com, Instagram and LinkedIn, Lindsey Weller. Thank you so much for your time today. It's valuable to me, and I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so great. Trip down memory lane. I don't get to do this often. It was awesome.
I'm glad you had some fun. Everybody out there, please review and rate the show, especially on Apple Podcasts. 5 stars, nice comments are always welcome. For show notes, go to our website, beforethelightspod.com, and follow us on Instagram at Before the Lights Podcast. Thank you for listening to Before the Lights. I'm Tommy Canale, and we will talk to you next time. Until then, everybody, stay healthy and keep smiling.